That's one button I really do have to figure out is how to run an ad. I'm not quite sure how that works. The way Twitch works is that you can stream for a certain number of minutes, and then after a certain number of minutes, you have to play an ad, or else they'll play one for you. And I would much rather dictate when the ad runs so that you're not like seeing an ad whenever I'm actually answering a question that you care about. So I got to make sure I get those buttons right and working. Soon to retired. Good afternoon from Durban, South Africa. Good afternoon. Respect. All right, so let's see here. Next up, we're going to take some of the newest questions. DumbQuestionsRUs says, would you still recommend formatting drives to 64K? Yes. And it's so funny because I just literally did that like 20 minutes before the stream. I just happened to do that. So yes, I do. Shefatyah says, what interesting stuff in the query plan XML do you wish was visible in SSMS UI's query plan? I don't go in very often into the XML, but the one thing that I wish was much easier to pull out of there was the parameters. I wish that there was a right click and run this query, or like right click and give me the call stack thing in SSMS, where it would just generate the exact SQL that it would take to run that query. Eric Darling wrote something like that for SP Blitz Cache. In SP Blitz Cache, there's like a call stack or commands parameter where you can click on it and it gives you the exact call stack. I just wish that was in query plans because it would make my life a lot easier instead of copy pasting a bunch of parameters out. DantheSQLMan says, do you have any advice on working out of the country with SQL consulting? If you mean working remotely, for people or companies who live in other locations, here's the deal. If that company is willing to take people who live in other countries, then you are instantly in competition with the cheapest cost of living places in the whole world. That's probably not going to work out in your favor. You're probably not going to be the lowest bidder. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're going to try to compete against other bidders for the same work, you're screwed. Now, having said that, I have international clients, not a lot of them, because the exchange rates don't usually work out. But the way that you get them is to have the reputation as the person to solve a particular problem. You specialize very deeply in one particular area, so they know, oh my God, we're having a problem with service broker scaling. We're Googling, there's only one person to call. Let's call them. And then it doesn't really matter what you cost. They have to pay your rate. So hopefully that helps out there. Mattia, good to see you in the stream as well. Someone says, I love you, Brent asks, good morning, Brent. We have 250 databases on an instance. We use SIOS for failover. All databases are on. Man, phrase it in the form of a question. Stop telling me your life story inside of if a train leaves Philadelphia and it's got 3 cheeseburgers on board, there are 4 women wearing 2 different pairs of pants. How many legs does an octopus have? Ask the question. What's your question? Separate out all the background information. One of my favorite, I had a terrible manager. This guy was a sexist, racist pig. But he had this really funny line. Somebody would come into his office and they'd be like, I'm having a problem with this client and they're not cooperating and they refuse to. He's like, stop. He's like, you have a story. Someday I would love to hear your story. But right now, just ask me the question. What is it that you need from me? Let's save the story for after 5 o'clock and over beers or wine or whatever. And so I never use that line on anybody else because I always thought the guy was just a prick. But now I at least have an amusing time with it when I read questions like this. I have 250 databases on an instance and I use SIOS for failover. That's your story. Ask the question. Hopefully that helps. Next up, Shefatyah asks, sometimes running SP Blitz first runs forever, but if we turn off expert mode and rerun it, it returns results instantly. Is this due to tempdb contention? Any blocking tips? Whenever a query, and this isn't SP Blitz first, this is anything. Whenever a query seems to be taking too long, in another window, run spblitz who or sp who is active. Either of those. I like both of them. And I talk about both of them in my class, how I use the first responder kit. What that'll show you is if a query's blocking. Most likely, that's what it is. And there are a couple of different things that you can be blocked on. One is SQL Server's own internal tables. Not all of them honor lock isolation requests. You can also be bottlenecked on things like memory, where it can't get enough memory in order to run. But spblitz who or sp who is active, and then looking at what's blocking each other will help you down that troubleshooting journey. Next up, NoobDBA says, can you share with us your biggest challenge on any consulting job that you've been into? The biggest challenge on any consulting job isn't the tech. It's the people. Sometimes there are people who actively want to block you, who want to stop you from making progress. For example, I was working at one client where this one person just immediately, as soon as I asked a question, would try to shut it down as rapidly. We already tried that. That couldn't possibly work. There's no way that's going to. We're not allowing that. And I was like, okay, so hold on a second here. Tell me everything that you've tried, and let that person vent out their story, for example. And in that case, when I got to the root of it, that person had been working very hard for years trying to get around the problem that they were facing. And he didn't want to look stupid because some rando walked in off the street and solved it within a few hours. So I had to make sure that, in cases like that he was okay. Look, this isn't a judgment about you. If you knew how to solve it, you already would have. I'm just here for a second opinion, and we're going to try things my way. If you don't want to try things my way, I'm going to leave. And it's not a statement against you. It's just that if you're not going to do what I say, well, then why would I take your money? It doesn't make sense for me to have people out there who are just going to get a report and then not actually do the work. ChopstickWizard, make sure to read the URL on the screen there. See, when I talk about people who are the problem, ChopstickWizard is a great example of that. ChopstickWizard has learned how to write, but hasn't learned how to read, hasn't read the thing that's right there on the screen there, right underneath me, telling me where to post a question at. That's okay. He's probably a nice person. Plus, they use chopsticks, and I suck at chopsticks. I mean, I continually try to use them. Every day, I use chopsticks, but just not that good at them. It's like rice. How do you eat rice with chopsticks? Like rice with chopsticks, I have to turn it around and use the big end of the chopsticks and just use them like a shovel. I feel like an idiot, but I don't actually do that. I don't want to look that stupid. Yusuf asks, is there a recommended way to run an SSMS query and then immediately run spblitz cache to analyze the most recent run for that query? No. If you want the advice that spblitz cache gives you, my favorite way to do that is to go into a dev server, blow the plan cache, run the query, and then immediately run spblitz cache after that. The reason why is that some queries have other things going on in the background that you don't see on the query itself. Great example is user-defined functions. User-defined functions don't always show up right in the query plans themselves, even in newer versions of SQL Server, but they do show up in spblitz cache, so that's why the free proc cache trick works. Cara Dune asks, what's better for office hours streaming, YouTube or Twitch? Twitch, because they pay me. Right? Like, I don't care where I stream at, but it's kind of nice to get paid. Your follow-up question is going to be, how much do you get paid? I think my peak month with Twitch was around $400, $500, something like that. That was when I was streaming a couple times a week on a regular schedule, like I'm about to, starting with the summer office hour stuff. So I'll probably make a few $100 a month streaming from Twitch. As a side note, if you'd like to help me out, you can subscribe to the channel and you don't even have to pay anything if you're watching on Twitch. You can subscribe with Amazon Prime. If you have an Amazon Prime membership, hit the subscribe button. I'm not even sure it's a button. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But then when you log in with Amazon Prime, you get one free channel subscription a month. Use it on me and I get paid, and you don't even have to pay anything extra. Call operators are standing by. Operators are not standing by. ChopstickWizard, follow the instructions. Woo-hoo-hoo! And says probably a very silly question. Man, you would be surprised. There are very few silly questions in databases. Some of the stuff that seems really easy is actually really hard, and some of the stuff that seems hard is actually really easy. It's weird how that works. He says, when I write select A from A, interjoin B, and then someone else writes select A from AB, which one of those is better performance-wise? That's not a bad question at all. In theory, it doesn't matter how you write your query. SQL Server will rewrite it under the hood to get a more efficient version of it, not by rewriting your T-SQL, but by building what you want into an algebraic tree and arranging the members of those trees to really get what you want from tables in the right order. In theory, that's how it works. In practice, SQL Server only has so much time in order to do query optimization, and the way that you write it first influences the plan that you get. So in my class, Fundamentals of Query Tuning, I go through examples of showing you how you can look at the different ways, look at their execution plans in order to figure out which one is better. And I show you how SQL Server will run out of time optimizing your query plan and give you a crappy plan in some cases. Now, for me, for my own uses, when I'm deciding between those two things that you've got there on the screen, I like your version because it's easier to read and it's less likely that somebody's accidentally going to do a Cartesian join. I find that when people do comma delimited lists of tables, it's very often that they forget to join one in and you get a Cartesian product in there and it's a performance nightmare. So that's why I like the inner join syntax better. Jungle Banana, make sure to read the thing that's right there on the screen. So there we go. Oh, this one, I saw this before the webcast, this next question. I found it really interesting. Let me make sure I click on it so it actually shows. Oh, connection's been lost. Let me restart that web page there so I can show it again. The EngineHorror asks, have you ever run into the Halloween problem? And can one say that in recent versions of SQL Server it doesn't have it? If you wanted to see the Halloween problem, you would have to be able to identify that the query that you ran changed the wrong data or had produced the wrong results to an insert, update, or delete. I don't know a lot of people who measure the results of their inserts, updates, and deletes to make sure it had the right effect. I don't think I've ever seen that outside of edge case test cases that somebody built. So while I haven't seen it ever in my career, and I rely on people at Microsoft in order to prevent that, if you wanted to test it, you could try going about testing it. Now, I've seen a demo case where Kendra Little used to do a demo using NoLock where she showed something similar to the Halloween problem, but it was just a byproduct of dirty reads. I have never seen something that was the true Halloween problem in SQL Server. So there you go. Good job on Microsoft for fixing that or staying ahead of that. Next up, I love you, Brent, came back with a clarified version of the question. We have 250 databases on an instance. Is it worth time separating those into different databases, reports, or timing out sometimes? Changing the database and the way the data is laid out is almost never the right answer because it's so expensive. What you want to ask is, why are reports timing out? And that's what my classes teach you, ladies and gentlemen. Go on over to BrentOzar.com, click training at the top of the screen. Operators are standing by. Operators are not standing by, it's just electronic sales. But then you go into fundamentals classes, mastering classes, and you learn how to tell. Instead of just randomly going, I think we should separate the databases. No, just find out why the reports are timing out, and that's what my classes focus on. Next up, let's see here. ExtramileDBA says, I've done tons of projects on SQL Server and recently moved to a shop that likes MySQL. Do you know of any awesome MySQL conferences? No. I would just Google. And if I was going to pick, okay, so this is interesting too. If I was going to take a topic that I don't know, Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, whatever, how would I decide which conference I wanted to attend? I would try to watch their past material, like look at YouTube. Do they upload the archives anywhere? Are old versions of the conference publicly available? I would also look at photos of the sheer number of attendees at the keynotes. At their keynotes, do they have dozens of people or hundreds of people or thousands of people? I like larger conferences because they tend to have more choice for sessions. But I'd always say that the best conference is the one you can actually get to. So don't be afraid to go to a more local or regional conference just to get yourself started. And then we'll do one more. This I love you, Brent just said something, but it wasn't really a question. Remember, we're answering questions here, not just taking comments, buddy. Aleksey asks, hi Brent, with the announced failover from SQL Server 2022 to Managed Instances feature still being in private preview, do you think that Microsoft will make this available in a future CU of 2022? Yes. At some point, so let's rewind what happened. Microsoft, hey, ladies and gentlemen, in SQL Server 2022, you'll be able to fail over back and forth to the cloud. You'll be able to take your database backups from the cloud and restore them back on premises, and vice versa. You don't have to be afraid of the Hotel California syndrome up in the cloud anymore. Your data will be able to fail back and forth at will. You're not locked into our Azure prices. You notice that Azure prices for data never go down. They don't change, and they haven't changed in 15 years, and you would think that these things are getting cheaper to host, but you would never know that from your bill. If you're getting too tired of high bills, you could just fail back down on premises. That was one of the big flagship features of SQL Server 2022. It hasn't shipped. It's April of 2023. They have to make it available at some point, or else they're going to have a whole lot of something on their face when they go to come in SQL Server 2023 or 4 or whatever next version is. It goes, hey, guess what, folks? We got a brand new feature. You can fail over back and forth to the... Oh, you've heard that before? Oh, we told you that in the last release? Well, no, it's actually in there this time. They have to put it in, or else they're going to look kind of stupid. Such a lovely place. All right, so that wraps it up for this office hours. Time flies, doesn't it? Holy cow, I could just sit and take these. Years ago, when me, Jeremiah, and Kendra started doing office hours originally, way back in the old days, we did them on WebEx. And we first started doing them. We thought people would ask all their questions within the first week or two, and then we wouldn't get any more questions after that. I'm always amazed at the good questions that come out from y'all. I'm also amazed at the bad ones. But we'll stop here for that. So hopefully y'all had a good time, and I will stop it here. I will see y'all on the next office hours. Adios, y'all.